Jesus says, man, I offer you a difficult and challenging life, but I will walk through it with you. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. And if you can walk this path, at the end is heaven, and I'm waiting for you. But if you exchange this difficult road for the easy road where everyone else is going, they may have a little bit easier life now, but they're going to suffer forever for it. He says, follow me, trust me. Everything that hurts is not evil, and write this, and everything that feels good is not godly.
Living through a season of struggle that doesn't seem like it's ever going to end. Walking through a trial that you have to endure, and it causes you to wonder if you can take the next small step of faith. When this year started, you thought it was going to be a great year of provision, but the provision didn't come. When this year began, you didn't think it would be a season of sickness, and now all you're doing is praying for healing. When this year started, you were filled with hope and enthusiasm, but all you've known is torment and anguish. It has been a long year. It's a year where you've struggled in your business. It's a year where maybe you've struggled in your home or your marriage. It's a year in which the things that you thought you would never see happen, not only did they happen, but they keep happening over and over and over again. First, you cannot give up. When you enter into your long season, you've got to give it all you've got. When people go into a season of struggle, the first thing that they want to do is take a sabbatical. But whenever trouble comes, the only way that you can get through trouble is work your way through it. Don't quit. How did Joseph survive in what others drowned in? Effort. Effort comes before excellence. When Joseph was on his knees scrubbing Potiphar's floors, God was standing over him and he says, I know this doesn't look like much, Joseph, but I promise you, you're closer to the breakthrough than you've ever been before. As a child of God, be a person of excellence. Too many people walk through the long years and they do not survive them. Why? Because rather than give it all they've got, they give up. Listen to the words of the Apostle Paul. He said, whatever your hands find to do, do it with all of your might. Why? As unto the Lord and not unto men. God is watching. God is the one who will reward you. When that time comes, let your life be lived in such a way that what you get to hear is, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Don't give up.
You know, we all suffer, don't we? We go through things. You know, the first thing we want to do when we're suffering is we want to run. We want to get away from it, some way, shape, or form. But you know what? You got to go through the hard part to get to the good part. You got to go through the hard part to get to the good part. And that doesn't mean the hard part's always fair. Life is not always fair, but God is fair. God is a God of justice, and that's one of my favorite things about the character of God. And justice means that He always makes wrong things right. God always makes wrong things right if we trust Him and if we handle the wrong thing in the right way. And so when you're going through hard things, you got two choices. You can give in and give up, or you can get strong.
Inviting God into your difficulties. Most of the time we're praying, God, get me out of this challenge. Get me out of this trouble at work. Get me out of this financial setback. And there's nothing wrong with that. But before you get out, you have to invite God in. Sometimes the miracle is not in getting out. It's in what God is going to do in the situation. And instead of just praying, God, get me out, why don't you start praying, God, come in to this hospital room while I take the treatment. Come into this trouble at work where the people aren't fair. Come into this anxiety that I'm dealing with. What's more powerful than God bringing you out is when God comes in and begins to change things. He comes in and gives you favor despite who's trying to push you down. He comes in and gives you strength that you can't explain, grace to outlast what should stop you. And if you're only focused on God bringing you out, then you're going to be disappointed, because God doesn't do things on our timetable. Sometimes it's taking longer than we thought. But when you ask God to come in, you can be at rest. God, I know you're right here with me. You are ordering my steps, and at the right time, you'll get me to where I'm supposed to be.
Sometimes when you're following Jesus, He leads you right into a storm. Remember, in the New Testament, there are 2 times when the disciples found themselves in a storm, in a boat. They thought they were going to die both times. But they were in the storm, they were in their trouble, not because they were doing things wrong. They were in trouble because they were doing things right. They were following Jesus. They were obeying what He told them to do. They were following His directions, and His directions led them right into a storm. But if they had not been in those storms, they would never have discovered truths about Jesus. There were things that they saw about Him they had never seen before, and they never could have learned them any other way except by going through the storms that they experienced. My tendency when it comes to storms is I want to go around the storm. If I see it coming up on the horizon, I want to find a way around the trouble. But sometimes God wants to lead you straight into the middle of it all, because the Lord has His way in the whirlwind and in the storm, and so you follow Him into the middle of it. He says, trust me, because the Lord has His way in that. When you are in the middle of the storm, that's when you look for God. Always look for God in the way things are, not in the way that you hope they will be, but look for God in the way things are, because He is not waiting for you on the other side of the trouble, waiting for you to figure it out and find your way through. He is in the middle of it, walking with you, working His way and His will, but you've got to trust Him in it. So when God says, do you trust me? Well, then you have a decision to make. Will you allow Him to do what He wants to do and not fear the outcome? Because to fear the outcome says, Lord, I don't really quite trust you. Will you allow Him to do what He wants to do and not fear the outcome?
Focus on what never changes in the days ahead. That'll give you stability. Don't focus on what's ever changing, because we don't know where it's all going to end up. You say, well, what are the unchangeable truths that I should focus on? Well, God sees everything I'm going through. Focus on that. God cares about everything I'm going through. That's unchangeable. God sees and He cares. God has the power to change what I'm going through. He has the power to answer prayers. That's unchangeable. God always acts out of His goodness to me. That's never going to change, no matter what happens. God is always going to act good to me. God's plan is always better than my plan. I may not see it, but it's better because He's a good God. God will never stop loving me. That's never going to change in your life. These are things you need to focus on, the things that never change. God's love for me, God's grace for me, God's goodness for me. Remember this. Remember that no matter what I go through, God will go through it with me. Every stage, every phase, every crisis, no matter what I go through, God is going to go through it with me. You will never really ever be alone. God is with you.